Let's talk about your third book, the Big Fat Sex Book, as you like to call it.
Big Fat Sex Book. Honestly, when I was writing, when I was running GRASP for 10 years, and when you're, in charge of the largest membership organization for adults on the spectrum in the world, you can be doing a crappy job, you can be doing a good job, but you're going to hear more stories from adults on the spectrum than anybody in the world. And every once in a while, you would get a phone call. And it would be from a mom, and she would say, do you know of any disability-friendly sex workers? My son is 36 years old, and he's never had an experience. And I would think to myself, okay, how do I feel about that? And in the end, I would think, you know what? I've got no right to judge. And if that's the only experience that individual has, and it causes them to smile in thinking about it, would I rather have that individual enjoy that or have nothing at all because of some moral pretense? I would rather have that individual have had that experience in a nanosecond. It's a go. My wife kind of stepped in and said, so you're going to throw your career away to become a pimp? And I had to put it on hold. But the sexuality component, like the employment component, was one that I was realizing in those 10 years I would want to do stuff on as a specialized subject later on. We've talked about the employment piece. The other hidden can of worms, which is really, less so now, but at the time when I would share this with friends in the field that ran other organizations, they would say, Michael, we love you, but, you can be a trailblazer in a lot of things, Michael, but on this one, you need to shut up. And I would get calls every once in a while by people who would say, I have just been diagnosed as on the spectrum and I work as an actress in the adult film industry.
Okay.
Or I'm a sex worker.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a situation where you suddenly realized, wow, here we are having all these demonizing talks about, porn and people on the spectrum and these BS constructs that people put, about things like porn addiction out there.
Right.
And, lo and behold, we got a new can of worms of there's a lot of people on the spectrum, in the industry.
Why were they emailing you?
Because they wanted to know how to process their diagnosis like anybody else who had just been diagnosed with Asperger's.
Wow.
They wanted help. They wanted, what does this mean for my life? And, it was certainly a learning experience, for me, because, at the time, I think we all wanted to think of porn actors as all being trafficked and all being coerced and all being on drugs to get through the scene that they were shooting, because that was the only way they could make it through. And it wasn't like that. It was a lot of choice. And dare I say it, part of it, not a life that I would want. Part of it was very healthy decision making. And, if you really look at it from the context of, does everybody love their job? I think that gives you a good enough of a start. And then suddenly you realize, that when it comes to people on the spectrum, there were other people that, kind of still wanted the picket fence American dream in their future. And so they wanted out and they wanted to hopefully be able to put this in their past. But there were other people that said, you know what? I like sex and I suck at relationships and the money's great. This is perfect for me. So it was a real eye-opener for me. And what I started to also see too was just like all developmental experiences that when individuals on the spectrum throughout our history have been taught areas of sexuality, we get the censored version. We never have gotten the same kind of options that other people were exposed to. And that is just such a cruel thing to do to a human being. And whether it was things like relationship constructs like monogamy or non-monogamy, really exploring things like that. I was really also turned on by the book Sex at Dawn. I remember when that came out and, suddenly was, educated to the fact that, when we were hordes of hunter-gatherers, traveling the world in packs of 30 to 300, that it wasn't just that we weren't monogamous. It was just that the idea of any kind of a possession, if you were a hunter-gatherer, whether that was, the sofa that you want to take with you to the next plane or a human being, was just idiotic because, life was very precarious that day. And it wasn't because of some stupid minor league porn fantasy. It was because of the concept of uncertain paternity. life was very challenging back then. The grown-ups died a lot. But if nobody knew who the father of the kid was, then that child would never be ostracized and would always be taken care of by the village. This was just stuff that was also fascinating. And I remember as a kid too, if you play guitar, and I was a kid that played guitar, I was in a lot of awful bands, but I was a really good guitar player. So you're going to have experiences, whether you're on the spectrum or not, if you can play guitar really well, when you grew up in the era that I grew up in, at least. And, I loved it because it gave me a way to communicate in ways that I wasn't very good at communicating otherwise. I think I appealed to people because I was a little bit more honest. I just didn't have the social construct to be a douchebag like other people did. It's not that I was a better person. But I also grew up in families that had their share of conservative members and members who thought they were really progressive. And I was kind of fascinated by how I saw the conservative ones really lamenting as they grew older that their ideas about a healthy sex life really had not panned out, and it was too late, and how sad they looked. And then on the other side, I saw this recklessness of, people invalidating, the emotions of people that they supposedly said that they loved in the name of being progressive. And I thought of how selfish that looked like. So it was always a subject that fascinated me, always. Mm-hmm. Especially when the spectrum stuff came into mind, I was like, I have to do something about this one too, along with employment.
You've been watching Autism Knows No Borders. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so let us know what you think in the comments section. Click here to watch this interview in its entirety. You can also find us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in each week for engaging conversations of how people across the globe are inspiring change and building community. Thanks for watching. Take care.